on this Monday morning. It's snowing in the Capitol, and the Beltway is always... I'm out in Studio West. I'm not dealing with the Beltway in January, especially of an inaugural year, but I am glad that they will certify the election of President-elect Trump today, and we are 2 weeks away from the inauguration. We are a couple hours away from President-elect Trump joining me here on this program. Don't miss anything today. We'll talk about the one big, beautiful bill. Speaker Johnson told the House Republican Conference at a retreat on Saturday that the president-elect had indeed weighed in on 1 versus 2 budget resolutions to get the year started, and he said he wants one big, beautiful bill. That means border, the wall, money for defense, money and deregulation for energy and housing, and the tax cuts, and that means coming to a conclusion on what the Republicans will put into their tax cut plan. Trump is saying we want it all right now in one big, beautiful bill. Now, that was not the position of a lot of people on Capitol Hill for the many weeks. It's been my position for a long time they ought to do it that way. And I was very, very pleased that Speaker Johnson announced that, and I hope the president confirms it today. But here is John Thune on Face the Nation talking with Margaret Brennan about what could be done very, very easily and quickly. One alternative, it's the two-bill strategy, two-step. Here's the first step, cut number 3.
Well, it's one of those issues that has become incredibly divisive for the country, and there aren't very many people left in the middle. Reconciliation enables us. It doesn't come along very often where you have unified control of the government. In a lot of cases, it doesn't last very long. It's a couple of years. The Democrats provided a template in the last couple of years for how to expand the scope of what's available to get done through the reconciliation process. It's the only process in the Senate that enables you to enact legislation with a 51 vote threshold as opposed to 60.
Right.
And so immigration,
but it's out of the
border,
gate saying we're not going to work with Democrats.
Well, I'm not saying what they came out of the gate. They had their first reconciliation bill done in 4 weeks, coming out of when they got the majority.
$2 trillion.
Well, and
with
they
the COVID
spent
bill, and you didn't like it.
$2 trillion,
You
and
faulted
then
them for
another
using
trillion with the IRA.
Exactly.
It would be ideal if we could figure out a way to do things at the 60 vote threshold. And there are a number of things we will. We think that a generational investment in the border is necessary given where we are after the last 4 years of what I think is a very failed Biden-Harris border policy.
There are 1.4 million people here with deportation orders of removal against them. I've seen numbers that put the cost of expelling them at between $80 to $100 billion annually. Can you get that kind of money in the first 100 days?
What we're trying to do is get an assessment from the people who are going to be in place. They're going to be implementing a lot of the president's policies when it comes to the border to determine what that resource allocation is going to need.
They don't know yet.
Well, I think that what we do know is we need physical barriers, we need technological barriers, we need more ICE agents, we need more Border Patrol agents, and yes, we're going to need ways of deporting people that are on that list that you mentioned. And so it's going to take some resources to do that, which is why I would argue that when the president takes office, and he's going to do a lot of things on the border by executive order, by executive action, that we're going to need to be able to provide the resources in order for him to do that. And that's why I've suggested that we take that border issue on right away and enable him to do the things that he needs to do.
Is it true you're going to put some defense spending in that as well?
Well, I think one of the things that we always argue about around here is the amount of money that we need to spend on defense. If you look at every Biden administration budget, there wasn't a single one of them when it came to military spending that kept up even with inflation. So we have a military readiness in this country. You know, we have the Defense Commission Strategy Group that comes out with a report all the time and tells us we are dramatically underfunded relative to countries like China, and that we don't have the capacity.
Issues, right?
Well, and we don't have the capacity and the capability to do what needs to be done to protect the country. There's a big difference in delta in the two parties and how they approach the issue of defense and military readiness. And I think we are dramatically underfunding our military today. I think the president believes that, President Trump. And I think a lot of our Republican colleagues in the House and Senate share that view. So can we do this through reconciliation? We're obviously looking at our options.
John Thune went on to tell Margaret Brennan that they are working together, President-elect Trump and the majority leader, cut number 3.
I will, and I think my job is to do everything I can to help him achieve success, be a successful president, which in my view means it will be a successful country. We have the same set of objectives. We want to get to the same destination. but I think at times there will be differences in how we get there. And understanding the unique aspects of how the Senate operates is something that I'm going to have to be able to share and convey to the president and help him understand, I think, what the contours are of what we can accomplish here in the Senate and what's realistic.
And then he went over and talked with the majority leader, John Thune, went over to talk to Christian Welker on NBC's Meet the Press, cut number 5.
Well, I think you have to, first off, look at what happens if we don't act by the end of the year. And that's a $4 trillion tax increase on the American people, because that's essentially what you're talking about if we don't extend the 2017 tax law. The president has had some other suggestions and ideas with respect to, that he would like to do in the area of tax reform, and we'll take those into consideration. But I think that we intend to ensure that we don't have a $4 trillion tax increase on the American people by December 31 of this year. And in order to do that, we've got to act collectively, House, Senate, and White House, to extend the 2017 tax cuts. Now, in doing that, I believe there will also be a robust conversation about whether we can find offsets and achieve reductions in spending that would help offset some of that. But then also, you've got to understand, too, that tax policy is directly connected to economic growth. And we've been told by all the experts, the Joint Committee on Taxation, Congressional Budget Office, that for every 1% increase in GDP, you generate about $3 trillion in additional tax revenue. Many of the tax provisions that are in law today that will be extended will have a very positive impact on growth in the economy. I'm somebody who believes in growth. With growth, you get better paying jobs, but you also generate more tax revenue. And I think that's something that isn't fully contemplated or considered when people talk about deficit numbers.
That is the important thing, is that he understands the things that Donald Trump wants to get done, that I endorse, everyone I know endorse. Border wall, expansion of the Border Patrol, expansion of ICE facilities, defense spending, energy deregulation, housing construction deregulation, and extending and revising the tax cuts. It could all be done at once. It can be done in 2 bites. Donald Trump wants to do it in 1 bite, and he wants to get it done in a hurry, and I think that's where the country is. Now, the majority leader knows the Senate better than anybody. Going to be a great majority leader. He'll figure it out. Whatever they move out of the House has to be considered by the Senate. So we really, all eyes on the House. What can the House put on the Senate's desk, and how soon can they put it there? Donald Trump wants one big, beautiful bill. He wants it all. The border wall, the Border Patrol, the ICE, the funding for military buildup, both in terms of ship construction, expanding the pay and benefits in the military, getting the recruitment crisis over. I'll talk with Donald Trump about all those things later in the program. And he wants to do it all at once. And it's going to be a difficult negotiation, because in the tax cut side of the bill, the Republicans from the Northeast and high tax states want to increase the SALT deduction, state and local taxes deduction. It's currently capped at $10,000, not enough for people who are paying all the taxes that New York State or California, etc., impose on people. This was the Kevin Brady manifesto, that they get rid of any incentive to raise taxes at the local level by allowing them to be deducted in the federal level. Unfortunately, people make decisions. Their lives are based on decisions that they made 20 years ago. And the Republicans made a mistake there. Donald Trump wants to fix it. He also doesn't want to tax tips. That's a great idea. He came up with it. It's got to pass. Lots that the former president and future president wants to get done. He'll talk with us about it a little bit later. My weekend is not spent shoveling snow, and I hope you are driving safely. It is an icy storm as it creeps from Kansas to Indiana across the lower mid-Atlantic states. It's just about going to hit Virginia right now. It might have begun in Virginia. I can't look out the window and tell you, and I didn't drive to the studio this morning, so I cannot tell you. I'm not in the Beltway. I'm on the West Coast for 4 months. And so I can't tell you what it's like. Former and future President Donald Trump will join me later in the program. I want to go back to the fact we have a big story brewing up in Canada. Now, that is sort of a contradiction in terms, but we do care about our Canadian friends. I've got a bunch of them that listen, both expats like Russ and Aaron, and many Canadians north of the border in Windsor and various places up in Maine. Here I am telling you that today your long national nightmare might be over. Justin Trudeau is rumored, if you go to foxnews.com, to be on the brink of submitting his resignation after many woeful years of inadequacy and absurdity. He's kind of an absurd figure. But he's going to step down today if reports are true. That would be a very good day. Joe Biden, meanwhile, won't go away. Normally, you spend the last couple of weeks, cleaning out, packing up, talking to people, making calls. And instead, he had a press gaggle yesterday, begun by demonstrating again the infirmity that he hid from everyone. Cut number one.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. All right.
Yes, he couldn't read the prompter, the kid's name, and he's pretty old and pretty infirm, but he's still angry. He's mean Joe Biden. Cut number two.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole life.
So I can't use the word that he used, GD life. So we'll play the edited version again. Cut number two, the president talking to reporters.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole life.
I don't know if he's talking to our friend Lucas Tomlinson. That's pulled from Fox. I don't know who he's talking to, but Joe Biden's met a lot of world leaders, just so you know. He also said, cut number six.
The Cold War is over. The Cold War era is over. We're in an entirely new era. Everything's changed.
Yeah, I sometimes marvel at how the media fell for, he's fine, he's doing somersaults, he's more nimble than I am, I can't keep up with him. All he is he's in the attic, rummaging through everything up in the attic. And in the attic, he remembers there was a Cold War when he was elected in 1972. That Cold War ended in 1989, and we have a Cold War 2.0 underway with China, about which he is blissfully unaware. But cut number six, just so you're disturbed enough about how we don't have a president for 2 more weeks.
The Cold War is over. The Cold War era is over. We're in an entirely new era. Everything's changed.
Chuck Schumer went on Meet the Press to try and explain how he lied to you for 3.5 years about Joe Biden's mental acuity. Cut number eight.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
Well, look, we didn't, and let's look at President Biden. He's had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation since since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, putting in 235 judges, a record, and he's a patriot. He's a great guy. And when he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better not only for the Democratic Party, for America. We should all salute him. We should all salute him.
Do you feel, as we have this conversation today, that President Biden could serve another 4 years had he stayed in the race and potentially won?
Well, I'm not going to speculate. As I said, I think his record is a stellar one, and he'll go down in history as a really outstanding president.
Yeah, I think it's pretty amazing. He can look into the camera and say that. I think it is. Our friends at Americans for Prosperity, AFP, I wish they would put out something on the amazing record. Head over to AmericansForProsperity.org, one of our great sponsors, and I want you to go to AFP for one reason and one reason only. People like Chuck Schumer will never tell you the truth about what they're doing. They won't tell you the truth even when we've got Joe Biden wandering around the White House. But Americans for Prosperity always tell the truth, and you can get involved in a year-round, 4-year effort to revitalize your community for the next presidential election so we can keep the Trump momentum going even after the former and future president retires. That's what Americans for Prosperity does. That's why you want to go and join AFP right now. AmericansForProsperity.org/volunteer. Get involved in a group that stays involved. AmericansForProsperity.org. David Bahnsen is the managing partner of the Bahnsen Group. He's also the author of the book Full Time, which is all about work and the joys of work. But we're not going to talk about full time this morning, Dave. We're going to first of all talk about wintertime. Have you been following this storm? Are you in the east or the west?
I'm here in New York. It hasn't come up here yet. It's nice and chilly, but no big storm yet. I guess that's more of a DC thing here than a Big Apple thing.
Well, I'll talk with Selena Zito after the break. They have 17 inches on the ground in Pittsburgh, and it's headed towards D.C., so we'll find out from someone else. David, the reason I want to talk to you this week is you're our go-to guy on financial matters, on markets, on trends. What do you expect for the markets in 2025?
Well, I think the markets are in a tension point, Hugh, around this fundamentally good part of the economy and fundamentally good expectations out of Trump 2.0, along with the other side, the tension coming from the valuations that are already pricing a lot of that in. And markets can get really bad when there's bad fundamentals and high valuations. Markets can be really good when there's good fundamentals and low valuation. It becomes trickier here when you have good fundamentals but already high valuations. And that's kind of the tug of war I think we're facing. I'm very encouraged by some of the stuff over the weekend. I prefer one big reconciliation bill because I do not want them putting off tax reform till the very end of the year and leaving markets sort of uncertain all year as to what's going to happen around some of the needed tax reform. That's a big issue. If they can get that done sooner with one more omnibus bill that covers trade, immigration, and tax altogether. You know, Hugh, very well, because you and I have discussed this before, what it did to the markets in 81, 82, when they passed one of the greatest tax reform bills ever passed in American history, but delayed its enactment until the following year. And that really hurt the economy and helped facilitate a double dip recession in the early part of Reagan's presidency. They need to get this thing done sooner and implement it sooner.
You're also referring to the sequence of events which has led to my adamant position that one bill is better than two. Because I was back in Reagan land when the 1982 election came in and the Republicans got wiped out. They got wiped out because the tax bill did not pass in time to have any impact on the economy. And if Republicans don't want to get wiped out in 2026, they will have the hard conversation and come to the hard conclusion and put that bill on the president's desk. They've got to pass a budget resolution. They've got to get a CBO scoring. They have to adopt. The CBO will score trillions of dollars of debt, David. Would that hold you back at all? Because the CBO always, they blow their dynamic scoring. They really don't know how to predict runaway growth, but they have predicted growth patterns of below 2% for the next 3 years. That's not really acceptable to Trump. Do you think it is?
No, one of the big variables, Hugh, that can help in the CBO scoring is the baseline that they use. If they start off presupposing that the 2017 sunsetting provisions are going to sunset, then they're really handicapping the scoring going forward of what deficit impact will be. But if they don't do that, then it enables us to pass something better now and not have the same proposed deficit impact. I'm a big fan of deficit scoring and dynamic scoring, and I agree with you that they ought to be bullish around the impact of what happened with Kennedy's tax cuts, Reagan's tax cuts, Clinton's reduction of capital gain, the Bush tax cuts. They should allow for assumption of great economic growth out of it, but that's not the only variable. There's also elements of revenue. I happen to believe that the deficit's coming down $400 or $500 billion this year, just simply because they've underestimated revenue. Okay, the U.S. stock market was up $12 trillion last year. And we don't think we're going to get 200 or 300 billion of additional revenue that's not currently CBO scored. That's a big factor in how the reconciliation process plays out.
David, it's sort of a puzzle, and for the benefit of the Steelers fans, the Congress has to agree on a budget, and that budget is going to be scored by the CBO, and they can approve a budget with a deficit number. Sometimes, I believe in the first Trump term, they agreed to have a red ink pool of $1.5 trillion in the first, and that's why they sunsetted it to keep it at $1.5 trillion. But if you add revenue, you can do more on the tax side. Not only can you cut taxes on tips, You can also cut taxes on Social Security, which is not my favorite idea, but the president likes it. And you can increase the SALT deduction, which is one of my favorite ideas because of the equity issue. But how do you get revenue? And I have three sources of revenue. I'd like your thoughts on all of them. First of all, gambling has taken over the country. Electronic gambling is everywhere. There are 50 different state laws on it. If the federal government comes in and preempts all those laws, lays down the law on gambling, and then attaches a small tax on every gambling transaction, let's say 25 cents, a quarter, what do you think that would do to gambling? What would it do to revenue?
Well, it wouldn't do anything to gambling in terms of diminishing the behavior because similar to alcohol tax and fuel tax and tobacco tax, these so-called sin tax things they've done, behaviors are not impeded by small taxes. They're impeded by large ones, and they're not going to be able to do large ones. It would raise revenue. It would harmonize some of those things. I'm not, Hugh, a big believer in trying to use the tax code to curtail behavior. I want it to be a little more equitable than that, but I do agree that there should be harmony. And we already have tax laws, Hugh, for how gambling is taxed federally. All they have to do is harmonize those tax laws to online gaming, and that would solve a lot of the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm looking for a per transaction. I don't think it will end it, but I think we could at least quantify it. The second thing is, as you know, and as most of my audience know, the federal government continues to consider marijuana a restricted drug, but that's not what the states are doing, and there's no enforcement. It's a silly situation where we've got marijuana laws of all different sorts and complexities, but an unregulated market out there. What about preempting all the state laws and putting something into place that is coherent as to the amount of cannabis, TCH, whatever the active ingredient is, in the drug, and begin to tax it on the federal side?
Yeah, I still, as the states have had a hard time collecting the anticipated state revenue because a very large black market continues to exist, even where there's been legalization in states, I'm skeptical that the federal government would collect anticipated revenue. But I do agree that where we have laws that are totally token, unenforceable, and basically laughable, they may as well just codify it and try to collect some revenue. This is a tough issue for me, Hugh, because I was a vehement opponent of legalization when I was much younger. Bill Buckley and, frankly, my late father convinced me of the argument for legalization. And now it's been such a debacle in the way they've done it. And you walk up and down the streets and places where people can't smoke cigarettes, but they're allowed to smoke marijuana. I think the way these states have done it is so bad that now I've gone the other side. So I move all around on the issue. But you're talking about revenue. And I certainly believe that if it's going to be happening, the federal government should collect revenue. But they're not going to collect 100% of the revenue they're supposed to, because this is just a space that lends itself to black market.
Yeah, in fact, the state set the tax codes too high because the dope that is sold through state stores is so expensive that people buy it on the street again, and on the street is more dangerous. It's got fentanyl in it sometimes, and the tax revenue did not arrive. One coherent national standard, one source of revenue makes sense. Then the big one. Many retirement funds are in traditional IRAs, not Roth IRAs. Roth IRAs are actually the economically advantageous. I always teach my law students, always go with Roth until you're maxed out, pay the taxes on it now, grow it tax-free forever. If they allowed for conversions from existing IRA 401ks, David, to Roth, and they did a flat 10% conversion tax, not the income that you're at, I think they would actually achieve a significant one-time burst of dollars to lower the deficit impact of the Trump tax cut extension. What do you think?
Well, yeah, but Hugh, they can't score it that way, though. They have to score it over the 10 years. And it would be a huge amount of upfront revenue. We've done this before, by the way, where you get a one-time ability to do it, but then you're losing all that revenue in the future. And so, first of all, to your broader point, remember, you can't go into a Roth if you make over a certain amount of income. And most people that are huge retirement funders are well over those income thresholds. But for conversions, you can. And right now, you're right, it's taxed at ordinary income, whatever your marginal income rate would be, where you're suggesting a 10% holiday. I'm agreeing with you. It would be a huge boon of revenue up front. but it would take away a bunch of revenue in the future, and they have to score that too, so it gets more complicated.
I know they would have to score it. I think it's almost impossible to estimate what that would be because the Roth can't come out, right, until you're 68 or 60, whatever the rules are. I have no idea what the rules are. But once you convert it, that conversion, it stays there. It protects your retirement. It takes away the distortion of playing with retirement funds, which I like in the market. Creates only one funding mechanism, and you get a windfall one time to pay for part of this tax cut. It is important to get this done, David. And the president-elect, who's coming on the show later today, said he wants one big, beautiful bill. Any idea how soon you expect that? What are you telling your clients when you'll have clarity on the tax bill?
Well, remember, 3 days ago, we didn't even have clarity as to whether or not they were going to try for two bills or one bill. And there were really good arguments. I mean, no less than Stephen Miller, who definitely has the president's ear, not to mention Senate Majority Leader John Thune, both wanted a two-bill approach. And there was a good reason politically for it. Get an easy win really quickly, and then just accept you're going to have a longer win and a harder fight on tax later. I disagreed. Speaker Johnson and others, you and I have both been on this side. Larry Kudlow, Art Laffer, we need a tax win sooner than November. And so we're not going to get it in February, March, but somewhere between April and July here is what I'm expecting. And the CBO window is going to be the most important part. You have to know what numbers you're working with. Once Kevin Brady got that in 2017, they knew what they were working with. You were right what you said earlier. It was $1.5 trillion. Then they had to deal with the sunsetting nonsense and turn the knobs up and down. There's things people liked and didn't like. You've talked about SALT and some of the others. They're talking about some things with tariffs here where they want to basically do a rebate for exports, but then tax certain things on imports, but then give exemptions for like energy. So this thing's going to get complicated. It's not going to happen in 1 month. 3 to 4 months.
This is what I always say to people, though. Every good settlement is a complicated negotiation that usually takes about 48 hours of short strokes. And you just got to get to the cutting and to the pasting quicker because it's still the same set of decisions. You can do it in 1 day or you can do it in 1 year. David Bahnsen of the Bahnsen Group, thank you for joining me. Follow him on X at David Bahnsen. Get his wonderful book on work called Full Time. Selena Zito joins me from Yinzerland with the Yinzer Report, but she can't be on the video stream for the Salem News Channel because, of course, it's Pittsburgh and the mouse has escaped. The hamsters are out of the cage and the lights are out. Good morning, Selena. When are they going to get the hamsters back?
Good morning, sunshine. Happy Feast of Epiphany if you celebrate, or if you're Italian, Feast of Old La Befana. And I'm outside of Pittsburgh in the mountains, so Lord knows whenever I'll get electricity again.
How much snow did you get in Yinzerland?
Well, I can't tell, and it's coming down really hard now. I don't think it start hitting us till about 1 in the morning, and we're supposed to get a lot of snow and then a break and then a lot more snow. Now,
the Beltway, it's currently snowing, and of course that's a 5-alarm panic fire because people in Virginia cannot drive. And in Ohio, we call this Monday, and not a big snow day. However, have they closed schools in Pittsburgh? Is it enough to have closed schools in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, they started, the school closures started hitting late yesterday afternoon and in through the evening. I don't think there's a school district that is open. And a lot of the main roads are closed. I don't know if people were paying attention to Kansas in the past 24 hours. But it's really been sort of fascinating to watch they literally closed all the roads down in Kansas.
What is different between now and then, when you and I were kids, and today? Because my grandkids were with me over the weekend, and they flew back east yesterday. And the big difference is they knew their schools were going to close today. They don't call it on the morning up. So there's no fun. There's no drama, right? You used to get up and wait for the snow day announcement.
Yeah, we would all sit by the radio, and you would if you missed your, because they did it in alphabetical order.
Yes.
If you missed your school, then you had to wait around and there was like 300 Catholic schools, and public schools. So back then, it was sort of everyone had to be really quiet around the radio. They
Yeah,
didn't do
the
it on
emergency
television.
broadcast system exists for days like today, but the old transistor world was dominated by these long lists of closures, right? They would never end, and it was like the best day to be in radio. All you would do is read a long list of closures. Now they put out a text message to the parent. Where's the fun in that?
You know, we've really evaporated the a sense of anticipation in this culture, in this society, and that's throughout a lot of things. We don't understand. There is an entire generation that doesn't understand the joy and excitement of anticipating something. Everything is instantly gratified. You don't have to wait for anything. And I think that's actually a little bit sad because anticipation builds things up until, you find out the answer.
Yeah,
And
well, the Browns fans are now in our favorite time of the year, Selena. It's draft season, and we have the number 2 overall pick. And now we begin the endless debate of Sanders versus Cam Ward versus Travis Hunter, and that will get us through April. That's the last remnant of waiting, because the draft is always in April, and there's always 4 months where Browns fans, who typically are not in the playoffs, just begin to go up and down the draft board and declare their wants and their needs. I believe your team is still struggling to make a contribution. Let me ask about this. Donald Trump is going to join me later on the show, has said he wants one big, beautiful bill. Do you think the Republicans will oblige him?
Yes, I do. I also didn't have, I guess I was a rarity, but I thought Johnson was going to go on the first ballot. I think that all of these things are possible, and I think the underestimation of Trump's ability to get things done, people didn't understand that in 2016, 2017, 2018, and a lot of that prowess that he is so noted for was often just sort of negated by the constant news stories of Russia. Oh my gosh, I couldn't stand. I worked for CNN at that point, and that's all they talked about. And I remember at one point saying, "I don't know anything about Russia. I don't know what you were talking about."
It's not coming back. The ability of legacy
it's
media to impede the president is not ever going to return. It's
right.
shattered. They broke their pickaxe on Donald Trump, and I don't think they're coming back. Last word to you, Selena.
Well, and I agree with you. And what I think is really interesting to me is to continuously watch our profession, along with the Democrats, still not quite, not even not quite, still blatantly not understanding why they lost, and still trying to write a different intelligent narrative. And it is going to make the people even trust them less. There is going to be a reckoning within our profession, and I do not believe they understand the gravity of it.
They do know why they lost. They just don't want to say it. And they don't want to say it because it's the repudiation of everything that has burdened legacy media for 30 years, hiring on other than the basis of talent, and they're stuck with the newsrooms they have, and the newsrooms they have don't want to hear the news. Selena Zito can be followed at selenazito.com, or you can follow her on X at Zito Selena. It is the last week that the radio show will be heard on the mornings in your local area. I'm moving to the afternoons, 3 to 6 p.m. in the east, out in the next Monday. And then I'll be out in the west on from noon to 3 beginning next Monday. Coast to coast, clear channel signals across, driving you home from work as opposed to driving you to work. I'm looking forward to that for the Beltway. Not many of you are going to work today because the snowstorm has shuttered the federal government and all the schools inside the Beltway. They're expecting between 5 and 10 inches. It's raining. Congress to certify Trump's election win as storm hits Washington. Congress is not subject to the Office of Personnel Management, and therefore Congress will be getting to work today. Hopefully they went in early. There's also a report this morning at FoxNews.com that Justin Trudeau could resign as early as today. Wouldn't that be a good deal? There's a story in the Times of Israel this morning that 34 names have been given by the Hamas terrorists to the mediators for early release. Israel has denied this report. This is an attempt by Hamas to regenerate interest in them, when in fact the world knows they're not negotiating. Mohammed, the brother of the slain leader Sinwar, Mohammed Sinwar, is in charge, and he's crazier than his crazy brother. There's not going to be a deal. They're going to have to dig those hostages out. The IDF has got to do it. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal has a very long story on Israel's Red Sea conundrum. Hit the Houthis or Iran? Of course, Israel can hit whoever it wants. Iran has no defenses. The Houthis fired more missiles over the weekend at Israel. They're not going to put up with that for much longer. The United States is not going to put up with that for much longer. I expect the rules of engagement to change for our naval forces on the first day that Donald Trump is president. I'll ask him about that next hour when he joins us. New York City introduces congestion pricing today. This is the worst idea of bad ideas. There's a lot of traffic in Manhattan. If you've ever gone anywhere in Manhattan, you know it's sometimes easier. I usually will walk when I arrive on the Acela from Penn Station up to Midtown where I stay, or to 30 Rock where I'm appearing, or if I'm going over to Fox, wherever I go, I walk, because trying to catch a cab is crazy. The only time you take a cab or descend the subways is when you got to go a long way. If it's a mile or less, you walk, because New York has been New York, and it's been that way since I first lived in the city in 1980. I moved to New York. It's never not been that way. So Kathy Hochul and the New York legislators dreamed up a way to increase taxes in the city, which is hard to imagine because taxes in New York are off the charts anyway. So they were hitting you with congestion pricing. If you come into the city from outside of the city during work hours, you get hit with a fee of $15. It's coming, that's the maximum fee. It's been lowered in recent days as the blowback has begun, because this hits blue-collar people. This hits delivery people. This hits people who have to go to work. They don't live in Manhattan. People who live in Manhattan and can afford to live in Manhattan don't have to worry about this. This is just a tax. $15 billion a year. All right, it's supposed to discourage you from driving. It's not. It's going to discourage you from having groceries. And New York City is adopting this. The governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, I don't think she's going to win re-election if she tries. People hate this. A weekend Iran prepares to face Trump 2.0. This is a story in this morning's Wall Street Journal. And the reality is that the Wall Street Journal doesn't know what's going on inside of Khamenei's tortured mind. I don't know if he knows that they're weaker or if he really believes his own stuff about the theology of end times. Don't know, don't care. All we have to do is send a message to Iran of maximum pressure is coming back in 2 weeks when Donald Trump comes back, and that will be good. The story also in the Journal, Republicans lean towards one big, beautiful bill for Trump. Republicans look increasingly likely to try combining all their top legislative priorities, tax cuts, spending cuts, and border security, into a single large bill. They forgot defense buildup, aimed to push President Trump's agenda through Congress in one fell swoop. Yeah, that's what Joe Biden did. That's what Donald Trump's going to do. That's the smart play, because the Republican majority is very thin and stuff happens. I keep reminding people of May 2001. Before 9/11, George W. Bush won. He should have won bigger, but he won narrowly in Florida. Took away a lot of momentum. They lost a lot of time with the recount shenanigans that Al Gore imposed upon the country. And the recount shenanigans took away a lot of the planning. But they got there, and they negotiated, typical Beltway style. Nothing could be done in a hurry. And it was April. Nothing had been done. The Bush tax cuts hadn't been done. And then Jim Jeffords decided he was going to switch parties. It was 51-49, or 50-50. Actually, it was 50-50. Because the Bush DUI story came out in a classic October surprise that happened in November on the weekend before the election. And W had got a DUI when he was 18, and it had been, for whatever reason, the only mistake I think Karl Rove ever made in a political campaign was not putting that out there the day that Bush declared. So they sat on it for the last weekend, and it caused a lot of erosion among evangelical support. If you can believe it, 24 years ago, they stayed home. They didn't know what they were getting. And W barely won, but it also combined with the early and erroneous call of Florida for Gore. I happened to work for PBS then. I've told this story before, but this is my last week in this time slot, so I'm going to tell it to you one more time in the event that you're a new listener or a new affiliate. I worked for PBS from 1992 to 2002 doing the nightly news and public affairs show on KCET in LA with co-hosts Kerman Maddox and Pat Morrison and Ruben Martinez. And we would just do the news, do the news, do the news. In the year 2000, we've been doing this for 8 years. The drill is go in early, watch the return. Everyone knew that the election was coming down to Florida. Everyone knew the election was going to Florida. So before the polls closed in Florida, I believe it was CBS, but I cannot say for sure, one of the big networks called Florida for Gore based on their exit poll. And they were wrong, but it caused a tsunami effect of destroying the enthusiasm of everybody else in the country. Because people, Darrell Issa, who lost that year, he was a member of Congress. He subsequently came back twice, I think. But Darrell Issa lost. People just got up and left. The volunteers felt, oh, it's over. Why are we going to bother getting out the vote in California? It's over. This was when California was still competitive for Republicans, when Florida was a very competitive state. Okay, the self-sorting has occurred, but 25 years ago it hadn't occurred. And people went home because of erroneous call of Florida, which had not only not voted yet, but it went for Bush. But they changed the whole election. People conveniently forget all of our problems go back. All of our electoral division goes back to Al Gore's decision to contest an election result that was not, in fact, wrong, and to a media early call that depressed the turnout in Florida's panhandle. People just went home. Bush should have won by 10, 15, 20,000 votes. People went home. They heard the call on the radio, and they didn't stay in line. They just went home. Why bother? They thought it was over. Al Gore was the president. We wasn't the president. That was the media's first big mistake. And for 25 years, media has fallen apart. They got a little bit of a reprieve with Donald Trump because he improved their rating because he's interesting and fun to watch. He's the best interview in America. He's coming up next hour. There just isn't a better interview than Donald Trump. And media learned that, but they didn't learn why. They didn't realize that they thought people were tuning in to watch them report on Russia, Russia, Russia. They were tuning in to hear Trump because Trump is entertaining and interesting, not to be scolded by CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC, and CNN. Therefore, their ratings are in the tank, and Fox News dominates everything and will continue to dominate everything because nobody believes legacy media. And if you needed any more proof of that, yesterday on Face the Nation, Nancy Pelosi shows up. Really, she does. Cut number 712. Cut number 12, Nancy Pelosi and Margaret Brennan.
Yeah, I do. I know that it has, but I hope that it will not, that we will shine a bright light on this and just say, this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. See, for women, women are known to be more, shall we say, ethical than men. And so when they go after women candidates, they go after their ethics. And they'll say this, that, and the other thing. And then the child comes home from school crying because somebody said a bad thing about mom on TV. And nobody wants that. So hopefully the bright light shining on that will reduce that. But I think that women have proven that they are more ethical and that they are, well, maybe they're not more ethical, they're all ethical, but that they can withstand that.
Maybe Nancy Pelosi has lost it. Maybe 84 is a good year to retire. Maybe you have no idea what you're talking about. And legacy media thinks America wants to get more of Nancy Pelosi. Not true. I don't make too much out of this, but I do know it's dominating X this morning, and it made the rounds last night. And I'm not talking about the fact that the New England Patriots managed to win and screw themselves completely. I really don't know how you win a game you're not supposed to win a game. You're not allowed to tank, and players like to play for their individual performances. But if you're the coach, and this may be why they fired their coach, the New England Patriots fired their one-year coach yesterday, even though Drake May had a good year and they're rebuilding. Because he won the last game. I think Kraft is mad that they won the game. They were going to have the number one draft choice, and they're probably going to pick Travis Hunter out of Colorado because they got their quarterback. Now they need a weapon, and Travis Hunter can play both ways. He's an amazing athlete, the Heisman winner. And they went out and they won the game. And really, you're supposed to tank, but tank gracefully. Tank in a way that no one knows that you're tanking. But the Bills, of course, whom they were playing, don't want the Patriots to get better. So if it's even possible, the Bills tanked more, and they have the seed sewn up. They didn't have to beat New England. They just like beating New England. You look down the road, you deny them the number one player in the country and make them choose 4. You've done a good thing. So the Buffalo Bills did a fine job yesterday of tanking and obliging New England. And that was great for me. For those of you who are new to the program, you're just listening for the first time because you're hoping for a snow alert. I don't know. Look out the window. It's bad out there for much of the country from Kansas to the Beltway. And a little bit south, just draw a line from Kansas to the Beltway. And all along that line, there's a big snowstorm. Don't go out if you don't have to. In the Beltway, really, you don't want to be in an ice storm. Remember, Senator Kane spent 27 hours in the ice storm of 2 years ago. And that was a January 4 ice storm, I believe, where he had a can of Dr. Pepper and apple. And he kept us updated on his phone. Look, you don't want to do that. Ice storms in the Beltway are the worst. There's no getting around it. So stay home. The only people who need to go to work today work on the Hill. They're the only people. They've got to certify the election results of Donald Trump being reelected. Donald Trump is joining me. The president-elect is very grateful. He's going to come along and give us some news about his views on one bill, two bill, winning, all these different things. I haven't talked to him since his big win. You know, Donald Trump is the greatest political comeback story in American political history. He won the greatest upset, right? The greatest upset ever in 2016, the greatest comeback ever in 2024. And talking to him is always a sleigh ride. It's always a roller coaster. It's always fun. He always makes news. Best interview in America. He's always been that way. So I always look forward to it and try and wrestle the beast and hit my brakes. Doesn't work that way. Contrast that. He's also very upbeat and happy. The former and future president is always happy. Contrast that with Joe Biden yesterday. Just wanders across the room to a White House gaggle of reporters. I don't know who spoke to him. We had to edit this response since we don't do the GD word on air. Cut number 2.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole life.
Do you know, I really don't care how many world leaders anybody knows. They don't know as many as Donald Trump. And those world leaders don't respect Joe Biden. They have been saying, behind closed doors, what Robert Gates said originally in his memoir and doubled down on it in his next book, which is Joe Biden has been wrong for 40 years about every national security issue. He's just been wrong. He's been wrong for 4 years. It's been a disastrous presidency. He knows it, which is why we have these wild swings. You know, I'm going to make a national monument out of half of California, and I'm going to ban offshore drilling everywhere. It's just wildness looking for significance as the collapse of a presidency is complete. Beginning my last Monday driving you to work, beginning next Monday, I'll be on in the afternoons. I'll drive you home from work on the East Coast, noon to 3, lunchtime live. I hope you call up your local affiliate and say, I hope you're carrying Hewitt. I want the real news. I try and make sure you know that it's snowing right now in Washington, D.C., so there is no news coming out of Washington, D.C., because when the federal government takes a day off, it really takes a day off. However, the members of Congress have to get there because the Office of Personnel Management, which I ran in 1988. I was the acting director. Director Connie Horner left. I had been confirmed as the deputy director, so I got to run the OPM through one snowstorm and shut it down. The old days you had to go to work. You had to show up at OPM on E Street and actually make the call to the Washington Post to tell them, and to the local radio station, WTOP, please tell the federal workers not to report. That was always the deputy's job, so when I was the deputy, I had to go in. And it's actually not the OPM's call. The president or the president's chief of staff makes the call. And then everyone stays home and everyone wants to stay home and they're not coming in anyway because of remote work. Maybe when I talk to the president-elect next hour, I ask him about the remote work rules. It's not high on my list of things to ask him, but I would like to have the federal government go back to work or be fired. I hope they put a reduction in force in the one big beautiful bill of 10 to 15% of the federal workforce so that every agency and department head has the authority to, no questions asked, just dismiss 10 to 15, 20% of the workforce. Now, I don't like them. There's always a best 10% and a worst 10%. In every organization, there's a most valuable player and a least valuable player. The federal government takes too much money. It's way too big. It should skinny down by 10 to 25% pretty quickly, pretty effortlessly. A lot of people like those jobs. They don't have to do it. They don't have to work so hard. Some people work very hard in federal government, very, very hard. You don't want their jobs. They are in peril. They are in dangerous places. Other people, not so much. And I loved my friends at OPM. I really did. But we had a security division that's since been taken away, which was good. They took it away after the big hack that occurred under, I believe, Bill Clinton, and they gave it to the Pentagon to do the background checks on all people not being cleared by the FBI. And we were awful at it, and the people that worked for us were awful at it, and there was no changing it. Federal Employees Health Benefit Program, not very good at that. Basically, the HR department of the federal government's not very good at HR, but then the federal government's not very good at anything. I will talk to the former president about that. Let me check markets. Is the Trump boom being priced in? This is brought to you by our friends at AmericanFederal.com. I got to call Nick today. I buy gold in January every year. I'm going to buy my gold today by Nick Grovich and find out. Some people do it every month. Some people do it every quarter. I do it once a year. And if you do it once a year, you'll average the cost of that gold over the life of your accumulation of wealth. And a portion of my income always goes to precious metals. And I put it away and I forget about it in a safety deposit box. Don't keep it at home. Only knuckleheads keep valuables at home. Just buy your gold from American Federal because it's straightforward. You go to AmericanFederal.com or you call 1-800-221-7694, 1-800-221-7694, and Nick or his team will talk to you. How much do you want to buy? Here's the price. Today, gold is at $2,656 an ounce. It is not going down, even though inflation will be solved by Donald Trump. The tax cuts will be cut. The price of gold is not going to go down because it prices in inflation. And for the past 100 years, maybe it'll go down for a few days, maybe even for a few weeks, maybe a couple of months. But over the past 100 years, gold more than kept pace with inflation. We're not going to deflate the economy. We're just going to stop inflating the economy under Donald Trump. The Dow was up 0.8 on Friday. The S&P was up 1.26%. NASDAQ had a booming day, 1.77. I only own one stock. Yeah, I own mutual funds because I'm not smarter than people who run mutual. But I used to own one stock. It was Apple, and then I got out of Apple. I bought into Amazon, and I got out of Amazon, and I started to buy into Microsoft. And then I decided, you know what? Let's just go into cash, except for Palantir. I keep my Palantir. I bought it when it first came out. I had to sell it when I interviewed the Palantir CTO, and then I had to buy it back. Lost a little bit of the upside during that period of time. But Palantir went up 6% on Friday. I don't know what it's going to do today. I never know. I just believe that AI revolution is going to have some big winners. I think Palantir is going to be one of those big winners. So I do that. But at the same time that I'm buying one speculative AI stock, I'm buying more gold. Why? Because I diversify. And mostly I buy mutual funds. I'm not smart enough. You're not smart enough. You're not smart enough to be a day trader. You don't know what they know. People who are working on Wall Street for Jamie Dimon and all the people at Morgan Stanley and all the people at Stifel and all the people at the various money management places like David Bahnsen was on in hour number one, they know markets. They know how to buy. They know how to diversify. I've told this story before. I did sit on one investment committee of one big foundation. And I never said a word. I asked a few questions, but I had no opinions. Because the people on that call, the people who work for that, who are managing our money, they were money managers like Peter Simon, Bill Simon's son, the late, great Bill Simon. And Peter just knows everything. And I would ask questions because I'm just interested generally in things. I'm curious. Should we stay in China? what about emerging markets in America? And Peter would give me a tutorial. It was the most fun. I'm not on that standing committee anymore, so I don't get to hear Peter explain everything for me. But I do know this. I don't know what the Peters of the world know. And there are a lot of them. And a lot of them listen to the show because they don't know what I know about politics and about reconciliation and budgets. So smart people listen to the show because they know I will tell you when I don't know. That's when you have a problem with a talk show host. But I do know that when it comes to gold, there's one firm in the country to deal with, AmericanFederal.com. Call them 1-800-221-7694. Now, Tom Homan. I love this guy. This guy is messaging all the time. I don't know, Mr. Homan. All I know is the borders are. And his job is to message, don't come here. He did that yesterday with Margaret Brennan, cut number 15 on Face the Nation.
Can you help us understand what the plan is? You know, a number of industries in this country hire undocumented workers because they are cheap labor. On day one, are you going to restart raids on work sites, on construction sites?
The President Trump's been clear, as I've been clear from day one, that President is going to concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats. And have you heard from your previous segments, we have a huge national security issue in this country. The southwest border has become the biggest national security vulnerability we've seen in this nation. FBI Director Wray agrees with me. We know there's people in this country who pose a national security threat. They've arrested a record number of people on the terrorist watch list, a 3,500% increase in people on the terrorist watch list being arrested at the border. We got over 2 million known gotaways. We know 2 million people crossed the border, weren't arrested, weren't vetted, weren't fingerprinted. So you got to ask yourself.
Okay, so that's a lot of people. Margaret Brennan is worried about, are you going to start raids on day one? Actually, this is why no one's watching legacy media anymore. It's a gotcha question. The first thing that comes to mind isn't raids on day one. The first thing that comes to mind is there are deportation orders on 1.2 million. How long is it going to take you to work through those deportations? How are you going to find those people? How big of a budget do you need? But Margaret wants to, it's the lefty agenda. That's what she deals in. It kept going, by the way, cut number 16.
President Trump's been clear, as I've been clear from day one, that President is going to concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats. And have you heard from your previous segments, we have a huge national security issue in this country. The southwest border has become the biggest national security vulnerability we've seen in this nation. FBI Director Wray agrees with me. We know there's people in this country who pose a national security threat. They've arrested a record number of people on the terrorist watch list, a 3,500% increase in people on the terrorist watch list being arrested at the border. We got over 2 million known gotaways. We know 2 million people crossed the border, weren't arrested, weren't vetted, weren't fingerprinted. So you got to ask yourself, why did 2 million people pay more to get away? Why didn't they pay less, turn themselves into Border Patrol, get a free airline ticket to the city of their choice, get a free hotel room, get 3 meals a day, get free medical?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Margaret says, yeah, but she's not listening. This is the problem. People don't listen. One more Tom Homan, cut number 17.
Well, first of all, we got President Trump coming in the Oval Office, and he's proven during his first administration his leadership on illegal immigration was a game changer because, for instance, El Salvador wouldn't take back MS-13 members when I was the ICE director. It took President Trump 48 hours to get El Salvador to take back their criminal aliens into their prisons. And Mexico didn't want to do the Remain in Mexico program, but President Trump was able to get Remain in Mexico established in Mexico. He was able to get Mexico put military in their southern and northern border. President Trump's a strong president. This administration has not forced these countries to take them back. And we have what we call a third safe country. We already have countries talking about taking back people from other countries. If for instance, Venezuela don't want to take their people back, there's other ways we can do it. There's other countries be willing to accept them. We're hoping that President Trump will work with Venezuela and like he did with Mexico and El Salvador and get these countries taken back. If they don't, they're still going to be deported. They're just going to be deported to a different country. We're not going to be held up on removing public safety threats in this country. We got to put the safety of the American people first. We've had too many young women.
This is messaging, by the way. The only reason to do this is to message to people: don't pay the coyote. You're not going to get in. If you get in, we're going to find you and send you back. Stop coming. You have to message every day for the world to hear. Mike Turner, chairman of House Intel, also on Face the Nation yesterday, warning people, cut number 13.
I think the issue of cells, and you and I were talking about that at the beginning of the show, are there individuals that are affiliated with ISIS and terrorist groups and organizations that have crossed the border, that are inside the United States? Director Wray, FBI director, has said so. We certainly have intelligence that says so. I agree with his assessment. Jim has also seen it. He's testified before our committee publicly of that fact. Those individuals are working in conjunction with ISIS with the intention of harming Americans. The director has said it directly.
They are known to U.S. intelligence and law enforcement.
And we are working diligently to try to take them down, to prevent them from doing so. And that's why the director is publicly saying
One more cut from Alejandro Mayorkas. Alejandro Mayorkas, cut number 10.
George, let me repeat what you said. The assailant who perpetrated the terrorist attack in New Orleans was born in the United States, raised in the United States, and served in our armed forces. It is not an issue of the border. With respect to the border, our highest responsibility, and one that we work to fulfill each and every day throughout the Department of Homeland Security, throughout the federal government, is the safety and security of the American people. That is what we have incredibly talented and dedicated individuals doing every day in their careers.
Secretary Mayorkas is not believable, and nobody does believe him. And we cannot wait for the whole gang to get out of town in 2 weeks. Happy 2025 to my guest, Bethany Mandel. You can find Bethany on X at Bethany Shondark. Good morning, Bethany. This is our last Monday morning wake up. I would like to know, though, is the snow falling in Montgomery County this morning?
So I just tweeted that I'm terrified that my kids are going to come into this room screaming that it snowed, and I'm just praying that we get through this hit.
Well, it's going to happen. That would be fun. Bethany, with 2 weeks to go, Team Biden continues to do all sorts of outrageous things, including sending aid to Syria. That was announced by the State Department this morning. Who will you miss least of Team Biden?
Whoever's in charge right now. We don't know who that is, but whoever that person is, we'll find out when their book comes out in a year and a half. That's the person I miss the least.
I think Mayorkas is pretty high on my list because I don't think he's ever actually leveled on any. I mean, he filibusters. He doesn't lie, just filibusters. He is going to be up there with Karine Jean-Pierre and Tony Blinken. But honest to goodness, I think Tony Blinken's the worst. He really doesn't. He doesn't know how badly he's bungled things.
So it was interesting because in his New York Times interview that he talked about, when Hamas has pulled back from negotiations, every time they've done that is when there has been daylight between America and Israel. And he was correct, by the way, about that. And I watched that wondering, well, then why did you continually introduce daylight between America and Israel if you knew that would be the end result? I found it a very schizophrenic interview.
He's doing his best to create some significance to his time at Foggy Bottom. He's been there 4 years. Is there, I want to be fair, is there an achievement of the Biden-Blinken Department of State of which you are aware? Even one?
I mean, I think that they did help get some of the hostages out. About 14 months ago now in November, there was, half the hostages that were being held in Gaza, they were released. Some of them were American citizens. What I found interesting actually about those releases was that they held on, Hamas that is, they held on to Abigail Lidan, a 4-year-old orphaned American hostage, until the 4th day of the releases. Maybe it was the 3rd day, which to me signaled that they were trying to just humiliate America, that they wouldn't release this orphaned little American citizen for days and days before they released dozens of other just only Israeli citizens.
I was not going to give them any credit for that deal because I think they made the deal much harder to get done by being schizophrenic. Joe Biden going to Israel and then cutting off weaponry. I just thought it was the beginning of the incoherence of the Biden administration. Anything besides that, we cover Israel a lot here. I can't come up with one actual, honest to goodness development of the past 4 years.
I mean, I'm trying to be generous here, Hugh. It's our last morning together.
You and me both.
I think that, the bunker bombs that took out Nasrallah, they were American bombs. They had to come from us. And so, I think that Israel had to sort of sell a lot of strategic assets in order to get those bunker bombs, but they were American bombs. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not really. They could have been in the arsenal.
know.
I thought the only thing that they stopped were the bunker busters. Okay, Bethany, the story in the Wall Street Journal today, Israel faces a choice, Houthis or Iran. They actually don't face a choice. They can do both. But if they had to face a choice, what would you do?
I mean, on behalf of all of my friends in Israel who have been woken up, 4 or 5 times a week for the last couple weeks, the Houthis are for sure, the biggest thorn in their sides, but they're getting all of their weaponry from Iran. So at the end of the day, you're cutting off the route when you cut off Iran.
That's, to me, it's pretty easy. They're not going to stop because they're not really sophisticated. They're going to keep, it's like fireworks in a kid. They're going to keep sending them off, even though they don't do any damage. They have killed one person. I shouldn't say that. But Iran is supplying the weaponry. If you want to stop Iran from supplying the weaponry, strike at Iran. Do you think Trump will take that position?
I wonder. He's surrounding himself by really good people. Marco Rubio is fantastic. Morgan Ortagus, who he named on Friday, is also wonderful. So I think I feel confident in the choices that he's making, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Steve Witkoff is also pretty good, who Morgan is going to be working with. And I believe that Elbridge Colby is a very smart guy. He's going to be the guy over at State who's the big thinker. Mike Anton's going to State as the big thinker. They got Michael Waltz and his team over at NSC, including Seb Gorka. I really don't think they're going to hold Israel back. That's the key.
No.
They'll leave it up to Israel to do what's in Israel's best interest. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I'm seeing reports that they're not even going to hold Israel to give over any humanitarian aid, and that to me is so fantastic and so long overdue. It's like we were giving aid to the Nazis during all of World War II. It makes no sense. If you're at war with a country, you're at war with a country.
I agree. I do believe that they'll continue to ask for trucks to be delivered with food that cannot be repurposed, but that's about it. They're not going to get anything else until every American is back, at least, and probably every living hostage. Bethany Mandel, I look forward to talking to you in the afternoons beginning next week. No kids broke in. Snow day. We got through snow day at the Mandel house. Thank you, Bethany. Follow her on X at Bethany Shondar. Coming up this hour, former and future President Donald Trump, the president-elect, is joining me at the bottom of the hour, so don't miss any of that. I do want to bring up to date on what's going on in the Beltway. We have a couple of late-breaking videos of the snow conditions inside the Beltway, which we can roll, Harley. These are, of course, my granddog, Maverick. Maverick has never met snow before, and Maverick finds snow to be very interesting. There's a lot of it. There's a lot more coming down. Maverick playing with his next-door neighbor, Buddy, and that's what D.C. looks like. 5 to 7 inches already. About an inch an hour is going to come down until noon. This means, for the benefit of the rest of the country, nothing will happen with the government today. They will certify Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States. They will meet for pro forma under the new law that was amended. Kamala Harris will count the votes. Donald Trump has 312 of them, and it will be over. They will get there. Members of Congress. I know 2 members of Congress, and they're both going in today because they don't get to stay home on certification day. No, there's not going to be any drama. They're not going to be. It's just the second time around, the shock that accompanied the first Trump win has dissipated. Trump is now part of the landscape. He's part of American history. Most significant political player of this century. He's redone American politics. There's not going to be the Pink Hats March. There's not going to be the setup that happened when he was ambushed at Trump Tower by Comey and Brennan and Clapper in January of 2016. But Garrity is here because we don't want to talk about politics. We want to talk about football. This is my football segment every week where I taunt Jim Garrity about the fact that the Jets are not going to draft till 7th, but the Browns beat you. We're drafting 2nd, Jim.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sorry. Can you see me okay, Hugh?
We can. We can.
All right. The blinding light from the Lombardi Trophy that the Jets have and that the Browns don't. It's kind of hard for me to see you.
I just want to point out that was what year was that? 1969.
No. And you guys had some pre-NFL, pre-Super Bowl championships, I understand, and they're in the warehouse where the Ark of the Covenant is stored, right? That's
when the NFL was the NFL and only 16 teams, the Browns dominated. Yes, and we're coming back next year with a new quarterback because we're drafting 2nd. And I put out. I just want to check with you.
I thought you didn't want to. Wait, you didn't. Wait, 3 weeks ago, you didn't want a quarterback.
I
now,
do
all of a
now
sudden because you are. Oh, okay.
I do now, and I don't care if it's Sanders or Ward. I want to know what you think of Dylan Gabriel and Will Howard, though. Do you follow college ball at all?
Not nearly as much, but only when it comes time for the Jets to draft. Will I start looking more closely at college players?
Well, they managed. The Jets managed to go 7th. What's their pressing need beside everything? We only need a quarterback.
We're in a situation like the upside of being a team that's deeply disappointing is that when they say, "Oh, our strategy is take the best player available," there really aren't a lot of positions where you would say, "Oh, we don't need one of those." Even defensive tackle, you could put somebody next to Quinnen Williams. Garrett Wilson, we are not going to let him get out of here. He's a terrific player. We love him. I assume Rodgers and Devontae Adams are not going to stick around. So we could use a wide receiver. We could use a linebacker. There's not a lack of positions where if you can get a blue chip player at 7, and you really should, then you can probably plug him in just about anywhere.
Now, Jim, this is the perennial question. The Jets don't have a quarterback and the Browns don't have a quarterback because both franchises took big swings and missed. Do you want them to take a quarterback? Even though it's not a great quarterback class, no one thought Patrick Mahomes was going to be a great quarterback. He turned out to be the greatest quarterback in my lifetime.
Yeah. I think at 7, you're not going to get one of the top 2 guys. And I think you'd end up reaching for the 3rd best quarterback in the draft class. I'm fine running with Tyrod Taylor, looking to see who else is on the free agent market. Justin Fields as a backup or something like that. And, waiting for the next cycle to run around. But I know a lot of people who say, "Oh, Rodgers is still the best quarterback the Jets could possibly have on their roster in 2025. Yes, but he comes with a circus. He comes with everything that is Aaron Rodgers, and it just becomes a pain. Look, what I love to have, like he had a great game yesterday, when it was meaningless, when the Dolphins knew that they'd been eliminated from the playoffs and they were running around dispirited and defeated. Yeah, it's great that you can throw 4 touchdowns in the last game of the year. It's great as lousy. Yeah, but at the end, Aaron Rodgers comes with his own circus of distractions. And I'd really love to see the Jets hire Mike Vrabel. I know the expectation now is that he's probably going to go to New England. But we just want somebody to come in who can establish a culture of discipline and focus and accountability for mistakes. And as long as Aaron Rodgers is there, the hierarchy goes Woody Johnson, the owner, then right down to Aaron Rodgers, and then maybe the general manager, and then maybe the coach, and then everybody else after that. And it just is that's not a winning formula for your organization.
Mike Vrabel coming to you from the Browns, I might add, where he's been a consultant for a year since being fired by the Titans. Good move. Let me go on to...
If you wanted to be cynical, Hugh, you could say, and how much good has that done you? There's only so much a consultant could do for you, but still, impressive guy, right attitude.
There are courtesy hires in the NFL where you bring in someone who's just waiting for their next head coaching job, and that's Vrabel. He would be great for anywhere he goes. I hope he doesn't go to the Jets. I want you tormented longer than me. Jim, let's go to 1 bill versus 2 bill. The former and future president joins me at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk about his demand for one big, beautiful bill, which happens to be my want as well, because if you can't get it now, you're not going to get it in the summer. What's your thinking on 1 versus 2 reconciliation bills?
Well, I think as much as I'm happy to see Mike Johnson returning as speaker, look, that and they managed to only do it on one vote. That involved a lot of horse trading, a lot of lobbying. Trump, apparently shouting through the speakerphone to the recalcitrant members. It's going to be hard enough to do it once. Going through the process twice is probably going to be more challenging. And I can see the argument that the more things you put into it, the more reasons it's somebody in the. But isn't it kind of fascinating? Like we're all like, oh God, are they going to be able to find 218 House Republicans to vote for this? Is there anybody even thinking about? Is there a single House Democrat who you think might end up voting for this thing? I haven't.
Well, that's why I want them to put the Dreamers in. I want them to put the Dreamer regularization into the bill because I don't think some Democrats can vote no on that. Do you? If they put regularization of the Dreamers, we're going to give you all green cards, permanent status. If you were not born in this country but were brought by your parents or a guardian when you were under the age of 15, we'll give you a green card. And you don't have a criminal record. What do you think? Why not?
Up until this past November, Hugh, I would say no. Democrats would not vote for anything with Trump's name on it. They wouldn't want to give him the win. They are perfectly happy to cut off their nose to spite their face, and denying Trump the win is the highest priority to them. After November, I don't know. Now, I'm a little bit surprised that I have. There are more Democrats who've said, "Oh, I'm interested in working with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency." Now, generally, they're like, "Oh, we have all kinds of areas in the Pentagon we're willing to cut." The usual, Democratic ideas of where the waste is. Which, by the way, there is some waste in the Pentagon, but it's one of those things where I haven't heard anybody who's like, "Well, Trump won. Whether or not we can argue about whether it was a landslide, but he has clearly got a certain amount of a mandate. There are areas we can work together with him on." I think the more stuff you put in there in one big bill, the more it makes it easier for a House Democrat to say, "Nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not signing on. I'm the party of opposition. I'm here to oppose." But on the other hand, I do think that it's just going to be really hard to wrangle the very small House majority and the very small House Republican majority, and as a result of it, you do it twice. That's twice as much chance for two or three of them to say, "Nope, that's it. I'm taking my bat and my ball and I'm going home and I'm torpedoing the whole thing because I can't get this one particular thing that I want."
And what is the most important thing that has to be in there in Jim Garrity's eyes?
Border security, immigration reform, address illegal immigration. A sense, and some of this will be done by the executive branch, and the perception of the roundups, or more markedly the deportations of those who have criminal records and who are already slated for deportation. I was on a roundtable discussion about Abby Phillips' program, and there was a contention that Americans will react differently when it's Manuel, the busboy at their favorite Mexican restaurant, who's getting deported. And my sense has been, you listen to Tom Homan and all these other guys, that if somebody's in the country illegally, they want to go after the drug dealers. They want to go after the gang members. They want to go after those who are the human traffickers, child sex abusers. They want to get after the worst of the worst first. And when that happens, you're going to see American people saying, "Amen, way to go, keep doing this kind of stuff." And I don't think they really, we can argue about whether Manuel the busboy needs to be deported, but I don't think there are that many Americans who think that Manuel the busboy is the very first, priority, the very first threat. And nothing Trump has said was that we're going to do that. So I wonder if the Democrats are counting on this deportation of people who are not seen as a threat, generating some backlash. And I don't think that's the philosophy the Trump administration is heading into this challenge with.
I don't either. I think if you got a deportation order, you're in trouble. And that Manuel the busboy or anybody else, it could be O'Shaughnessy who came over illegally. Doesn't matter if you have if your nose is clean and you're going to work. I don't think you have anything to worry about. But we'll find out. Jim from the president-elect is coming up in about 10 minutes. Thank you, Jim Garrity. Follow him on X at Jim Garrity. Coming up at the bottom of the hour. Donald Trump. Return to the Hugh Hewitt Show. It's always an adventure. He is the best interview. I've been doing this a long time. I've been on the radio since 1990, on television since 1992, and there isn't anyone who comes close to being the best interview in America other than Donald Trump, because he actually tells you what he thinks at that moment. And so just do your prep, have good questions ready, don't get too much in his way, let him talk. And that's what I intend to do, so stay tuned. So what are we losing when Joe Biden leaves? What's going away? Well, he's just such a joyful guy to be around. We're going to lose a lot of just joy. Can we play the president in the, I've lost my cut sheet somewhere, so I don't have the president in the East Room yesterday talking with reporters in his typical winsome way about how many world leaders he knows.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole life.
All right, now, we're not allowed to play the word that he uses. All right, I really have no way of understanding what the current president is saying. Neither does his staff. If you think he made the decision to attempt to sequester a bazillion gallons of oil under the ocean, he's putting a permanent ban on leasing of oil in a lot of the coastal region of the United States. It's no good. It can be reversed with an executive order. They say, oh, no, he's doing it pursuant to statute, so it can't be reversed. That's not true, but if that's the case, just add that into the one big, beautiful bill that I'll talk to Donald Trump about. But what's he really doing here? He hates the media more than anybody. Donald Trump loves the media. W was amused by the media. Obama condescended to the media, and the media was in awe of him, and they sucked up to him for 8 straight years. We haven't had a good White House media. They're either overly invested in someone like Obama or overly hostile to someone like Trump, as opposed to just asking questions. But why does Biden hate the media so much? Again, play that clip for me, just so you get the contempt in his voice.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole life.
So do you think he's a little bit sensitive about the fact that everyone has noted that he's infirm? Do you think he's a bit touchy about the fact that everyone is talking about the greatest journalism scandal of my lifetime, the hiding of the president's impairment? And his physical infirmity we have known for a long time. We're beginning to hear him. We're going to just keep hearing more and more. He's not making any decisions. He hasn't been making any decisions for a long time. The guy who makes decisions, and you can count on it, is Donald Trump. And the president-elect joins me next live in the Relief Factor studios out west, where I'm spending the first 4 months of the year teaching con law. And I will be teaching about the fact that the extraordinary change in the Supreme Court wrought by Donald Trump has made me redesign my entire con law class, because there's never been a greater impact on the Supreme Court in my lifetime than that has been worked by President-elect Trump in his first 4 years. Now, I don't know if there'll be another retirement on the Supreme Court. I expect that there will be one, maybe two. We'll see. It's 4 years a long time. There was only one in the last 4 years. It's a regular sort of term. Not many people get 3 appointments to the Supreme Court like Donald Trump did. But we're standing by waiting for the president-elect, because one of the things I want to talk to him about is judges. I always talk to him about judges because that's what matters a lot. But I've had to redo I've spent the weekend getting ready for this with these 2 books. Land of Hope is the single best American history book out there, comprehensive survey. And then this book, An Introduction to Constitutional Law, 100 plus cases. Now, those are not the standard case books that I've used forever. I used Randy Barnett for a year. I used Erwin Chemerinsky for a long time. I've used a lot of different case books over the year, but I had to switch because the Supreme Court has changed so much with the 3 Trump appointees. It's become an originalist court, and a lot of the decisions that used to require a lot of time to teach don't exist anymore. For example, the Dobbs decision did the right thing and returned all questions about abortion and reproductive rights to the states where they ought never to have been taken from, and the states are working through it, and there isn't going to be a federal statute on that. There is also the non-delegation doctrine. Maybe it'll be revived. I don't know, but I know that Chevron deference is dead. That happened in the last term with the Loper-Bright case. We also know that major rules are going to require actual regulatory authority from Congress. The agencies are not going to be allowed to make it up anymore. Joined now by the president-elect. Mr. President, welcome back. Congratulations on the biggest upset win in 2016 and now the greatest political comeback in American history.
Well, thank you very much. I hope it wasn't really an upset, but, call it what you want. But we had a great campaign. It was a great campaign and a lot of great people involved. So
it is a big. I was thinking
we're going to make America great again.
I know.
Make America great again.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm so looking forward to it. I want to begin by thanking you, though, for calling Dennis and Sue Prager after Dennis's injury. It meant a lot to them. It's not something you have to do. I appreciate everyone who's a friend of Dennis appreciates that. I was talking to Sue Prager about the call the other day. She forgot to tell you she wants E-Verify made mandatory. She asked me to relay that to you today.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll think about that. He's a fantastic man, and boy, what a terrible fall that is, right? What a
Yeah,
terrible
he's
fall
coming
he's
back.
had.
I'm hopeful. Mr. President, Mike Johnson told the Republicans on Saturday that you favor one big, beautiful bill. I do too. Tell us about your thinking on that.
Well, I favor one bill. I also want to get everything passed. And, there are some people that don't necessarily agree with it. So I'm open to that also. My preference is one big, as I say, one big, beautiful bill. Now, to do that takes longer. To submit it takes longer, actually. But so it's a longer process. I would say that I'd live with that. I believe we'd get, I don't know, to me it just is cleaner, it's nicer. Now, with that being said, we'd get some border work done a little bit earlier, et cetera, et cetera. But the border work, we have a lot of money that we're going to be clawing back from the Green New scam and all of the trillions of dollars, billions and trillions. You usually have to use the word trillions nowadays, unfortunately. But from the trillions of dollars that we're going to be clawing back, and we have money. We don't need it desperately, immediately. If 2 months is going to make a difference. So I can just say this: the border is going to be secure. We're going to start it immediately. Tom Homan is central casting. He's going to do a great job, and that whole group is going to be fantastic. And I did it before, and we're going to do it again. We had the best border we've ever had, and now we'll have the best border we've ever had times two. I would prefer one, but I will do whatever needs to be done to get it passed. And, we have a lot of respect for Senator Thune, as you know. He may have a little bit of a different view of it. I heard other senators yesterday, including Lindsey, talking about it. They prefer it the other way. So I'm open to either way as long as we get something passed as quickly as possible.
The reason I want one bill is because tax certainty matters to small business people like me and like everyone listening to the show. They got to know what the rules are going to be in 2026. You've got a great Trump tax cuts, but they're expiring at the end of the year. The sooner we know, you're a businessman, the better off we are.
Well, it would be awfully hard to imagine. In the old days, politicians would get up and talk about tax cuts, right? We will cut your taxes. We will cut your taxes. That was like a sure way to get elected. Because the Democrat Party is so loused up, it's so terrible. And so they've lost their confidence. They've lost a lot of confidence. But they get up and they're the only party I've ever heard that say, we're going to raise your taxes. With that being said, I can't imagine that they would not approve. This would be the largest tax increase in the history of the world, okay? I mean, let alone in this country. And I can't imagine the Democrats would do that to this country and do that to the people just because they happen to dislike Republicans or me.
Yeah, I can't either, but they are Democrats, so we don't know. Mr. President, you've got four big things coming up in this term. You've got our 250th birthday on July 4th next year, 2026. But we actually have the 250th birthday of Lexington and Concord in April. That's a big deal. That's the shot heard around the world. Are you going to go up there for a speech on the 250th anniversary of that?
I like the idea. I think so. People have talked about it. I would do it.
Then you've got the Olympics. You've got the World Cup. You have the very sad 25th anniversary of 9/11 coming up. Which of these do you think is going to be the most fun in terms, obviously it's not 9/11, but is Olympics, World Cup, the 250th birthday, what are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I got them, and it was very interesting. They called me, the World Cup. I did that with Gianni and the people at the World Cup, and I got them. They wanted it here, and they really fought very hard, and I was the one that got it when I was president. And so I said to myself, the sad part is, this was before the election, before a certain election that took place that we won't talk about. But I said the sad part is I got the Olympics and I got the World Cup for our country, and I will not be there as president. And look what happened. I'm going to be there as president. So it's sort of very nice. And obviously the 25th anniversary, it's hard to use the word anniversary, but that 25th anniversary is also very important.
It's going to be very, very somber. I'm looking forward to your speech that day. But I'm really looking forward. The bicentennial, not the bicentennial, the 250th birthday will be quite a big day. Mr. President, Powerline guys posted your testimony about the UN from 2005 over the weekend, so a lot of people got to see that. I have told everyone I've ever known, watch that testimony. That's Donald Trump, the developer, talking about getting things done. Is that the same momentum you're bringing in this time? You just want to get things done?
Got to get things done. We don't get them done. I see it just came over that Biden has banned all oil and gas drilling across 625 million acres of U.S. coastal territory. It's ridiculous. I'll unban it immediately. I will unban it. I have the right to unban it immediately. What's he doing? Why is he doing it? You know, we have something that nobody else has. I mean, nobody has to the extent we have it, and it'll be more by the time we finish because I'll be able to expand. You know, we're going to expand our country, and it'll be more. We have oil and gas, and whether you manufacture widgets or gadgets or whatever you happen to be doing, some countries have to work very hard to do that. We do too, and we will. But we have oil and gas at a level that nobody else has, and we're going to take advantage of it. And when I see somebody saying he's going to ban 625 million acres, he doesn't know what that is. He doesn't even know what 625 million acres would look like. And we can't let that happen to our country. It's our greatest. It's really our greatest economic asset. And we're not going to let that happen to our country.
I saw that. I don't believe he's making any of these decisions. He might be signing, someone might be guiding his hand, but do you think he's competent for the last 2 weeks, Mr. President?
Well, the things he's doing with Soros and other elements, giving very, very important, distinguished awards, medals, and certifying that they are wonderful people for our nation. These are people that have done tremendous harm in cases. I don't know. I really don't believe that this is the same man that I used to watch 25 years ago. He was sort of semi-conservative. I wouldn't call him conservative, but he was a little bit in the middle at least. And now he's gone radical left, and they just lost an election because they were radical left, and they're going to lose another one. They're going to lose a lot of elections if they keep this going. But you're giving up the biggest assets that we have. I mean, all of that. If you ever look at it on a map, what 625 million acres is, he's giving this all up. And
it's extraordinary, and I think it's an abuse of that statute, and I do think you can reverse it, if not.
The good news is I can change it immediately. Yeah. It'll be changed on day one. I can change it immediately. Now, they'll do everything they can to make it as difficult as possible. You know, they talk about a transition. They're always saying, oh, no, we want to have a smooth transition from party to party of government. Well, they're making it really difficult. They're throwing everything they can in the way. They're giving out trillions of dollars in nonsense, in Green New Deal crap that isn't worth a damn thing. In fact, it's a negative for the country, not a positive. And they're giving out money at levels that nobody's ever seen just to get the money. They're throwing it at people.
They're throwing it at Syria this morning. The State Department announced this morning they're sending humanitarian aid to Syria. We don't know who's running Syria. I don't know who's running the State Department, but it's kind of crazy.
It's what they're doing. They're just taking money and throwing it hand over fist. It's money that should have never been given to them anyway. It should have been blocked. And I mean, it's sad, so sad that they got it, but they're throwing it, and they're throwing it in any direction. They just want to get rid of it. It's the worst abuse of power I've ever seen.
So, Mr. President, let's turn to Israel.
Other than what they did to me, of course.
Okay, yes, let's go to Israel. We'll get to Jack Smith in a moment. I'll get to the archivist in a moment. Will Israel have a friend in the White House again? Because Joe Biden's been a yo-yo with Israel. You know, will you continue military aid uninterrupted? Depart from the Biden policy of micromanaging. We got about a minute down the line, folks. Go ahead.
Well, I'm the best friend that Israel ever had. You look at what happened with all of the things that I've gotten, including Jerusalem being the capital, the embassy getting built. I got it built. I not only said we're going to, I said, we got it built. We have a beautiful embassy. All of the different things, the magnificent Mount on High, you know what I'm talking about there. Everyone said that couldn't be done, and I got it done. It was what we've done. And, of course, the Abraham Accords. You look at the Abraham Accords. Every single thing every major event that's happened to Israel over the last fairly short period of time has been given through me. So I'm with Israel. I think that's pretty obvious to everybody.
It is. I'm going to continue talking now with the president.
I'm also for this. I do have to add, I'm also for peace. It's time. This fight's been going on for a long time. Longer than people would understand. Longer
15 months.
Longer
Yeah.
than people will know. And
What do you mean? And by the way, to our audience, we'll be continuing to talk to the president. Come right back to us on the Salem News Channel. Mr. President, when you said they'll be held to pay if the Americans are still being held hostage, what did you mean?
Exactly what it says. If those hostages aren't released by the time I get to office, they will be held to pay. I don't think I have to go into it anyway. It won't be the word don't. You know, I heard the word don't. You can add that into it, but that would just be a small part of it. No, they will be held to pay. Those hostages have to get out. They have to get out now.
All right, Mr. President, let's turn to your legacy. You already have a legacy on the Supreme Court. I was talking about it when you joined me. And you'll add more judges, and you might get another justice. You've had the most important impact on the court of any president in my lifetime. It will get bigger. I want to talk to you about the Navy. The greatest presidents of the 20th century, Teddy Roosevelt, FDR, and Reagan, all built the Navy. Do you intend to rebuild the Navy?
I do. We have a great gentleman that had, you know, as you know, perhaps
John
you can
Phelan.
get him on your show.
Yep.
He's fantastic. John is fantastic. Very, very successful business person. Very successful, top. And he's in charge of it. And we're going to do something with ships. We need ships. And we may have to go a different route than you would normally go. That's, you know, starting to build. We don't build ships anymore. We used to build a ship a day. We don't build ships anymore. We want to get that started. And maybe we'll use allies also in terms of building ships. We might have to. We need ships. China's building, from what I'm hearing, every 4 days, they're knocking out a ship. And we're sitting back watching. We've suffered tremendously during the Biden administration. All he knew about was the Green New Deal, building nonsense, giving money away, putting windmills all over the place that are destroying every beautiful plain and field and mountain. Oh, it's so sad when you fly over the country and you see all these horrible-looking structures. Half of them are closed down, rusted and rotted. Their life is over. You know, they last a very limited period of time, and then everybody just leaves them. They go to the next ripoff. And all the subsidy they get. You know, the subsidy is ridiculous. But what they've done to this, I mean, they're just destroying the beauty of our country. It's hard to believe environmentalists like windmills. Okay, it's the most expensive energy you could have.
They are not my favorite thing, but I want to stay on ships for a moment. Up in Maine at the Bath Iron Works during World War II, they turned out a destroyer every 17 days. Now they do 1.5 a year. Can you change that? Can you bring the developers' point of view to shipbuilding and get new docks, graving docks built, new ship lines open, production?
Well, that's what you need. You know, in Wisconsin, I gave out a great contract for just essentially destroyers. Beautiful. They were beautiful. I even had something to do. I'm a person that believes in the beauty of a ship. It doesn't cost anymore to have the right angles. And it was really beautiful. And they were going and really doing a good job. And the generals, the Biden admirals and generals and all of the people that are involved, they started playing around and tinkering and changing the design and this and that. You know what that costs? That costs a lot of money because now they say, oh, it's going to cost more money for something that's not as good. But they started playing around with the design. I heard about that a year later. They took what I had. It was perfect. And what it is you build it. No changes, no change orders, no extra money, no nothing. You build it. They were doing a great job. But the generals or the admirals went in and they said, oh, why don't we make it a little bit wider? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And it was designed specifically for speed and other things. When you start making it wider, you start making it slower. And it was also designed on a ship that was unbelievably successful in that same class. You know, design-wise.
Yeah, Fink and Terry designed it, and you bought it.
And they make changes. They always have to make changes. You know, these guys get in there and they think they're smart, and in many cases, unfortunately, they're not smart. And they take something and they make it worse for a lot more money. That's what they do. I mean, they spend more money to make it worse.
To get a Navy up to even 330 ships, much less, you'd have to say every day, what have we done for the Navy today? Is that the kind of focus you're bringing in, like call Phelan every day? What have you done today, Mr. Secretary of the Navy? Because that's the focus.
That. Yeah, I'll be doing that. But we're going to be announcing some things that are going to be very good having to do with the Navy. We need ships. We have to get ships. And, you know, everybody said, oh, well, we'll build them. We may have to go to others, bid them out, and it's okay to do that. we'll bid them out until we get ourselves ready. We're not prepared for ships. We don't have docks. You know, Biden is closing everything. It's almost like they have a death wish for this country. He wants to close docks. He doesn't want anybody building anything. All they talk about is Green New Deal. That's the only thing they really talk about. And you know what? It doesn't work. People don't care about it. They're so tired of it. You know, we had the cleanest air and water that we've ever had during the Trump administration. And all you hear about is what they want to do. They want to destroy our country. And that's what's happened. And that's why the election was such a tremendous success from the Republican standpoint. Hey, look, we had 7 swing states. You and I would talk about it. 7 swing states. Well, if you could win 3 or 4, it would be great. We won all 7, and we won them by a lot. You know, they weren't close.
Yeah, you've got a mandate. That's why I want you to put everything into one big, beautiful bill, because I don't think they can say no. I want to know, though, would you put regularization of the Dreamers into that bill to attract some Democrats?
I don't think it has to be in that bill, but I'm okay with talking about the Dreamers. It's been a long time. You know, everybody's been talking about the Dreamers. These are people that have been here since, in many cases, birth. They've been here for, many years. They were very young, and now they're middle-aged people. In some cases, they're old people. It's been talked about, and I'm certainly open to talking about it.
Yeah, I think they could put it in the one big, beautiful bill. Let me move on to the archives. You know, all of your problems in Florida at Mar-a-Lago started because the archivist complained to the DOJ because he hated you. Now, the archivist who's there now is not the one who screwed you over, but it's a new archivist. Are you going to replace this archivist and get someone who actually protects the legacy of the United States and doesn't persecute political appointments?
Well, the one who was there was a disaster, and he turned out to be wrong. And then you saw the Biden stuff come out, where Biden had 50 years of documents, and what he had was just outrageous. And he didn't have the right to have them. You know, I have the Presidential Records Act. He had nothing because he wasn't president at the time, so he wasn't covered by it, but I was. And we also had a very brilliant and very fair judge on the case. And as you know, we won that case, and we won it convincingly. And Jack Smith was sent. I assume he's heading back to The Hague where he can execute people. He shouldn't be allowed to execute anybody. His judgment is so bad and so evil, but he's a bad person. I call him deranged Jack Smith. But we won that case. That was the big case, and we won those cases. You know, the one in Washington also. But the judge in Florida was really a brilliant woman.
She is smart. She handled it well. I just want a new archivist so we don't have to do this again when you leave office again.
Well, I think I can tell you that we will get somebody, yes. Let me just put it in. Yeah, we will have a new archivist.
Now, Xi Jinping, he is actually your rival. He's the only guy that is remotely as strong as the United States. He's a tough guy. Are you going to be able to deal with him?
I believe we will. You know, their economy is not doing very well right now, and they need us very badly. I believe we will. You know, I had a great relationship until COVID. That was a bridge too far. But I had a great relationship with President Xi. It was, very solid, very strong, very friendly. He's a strong man, powerful man. He's certainly revered in China. But they are having problems, and I think we will probably get along very well, I predict. But, it's got to be a two-way street. China is ripping off the United States for $1 trillion a year. Would you say that's a lot of money? $1 trillion, $1 trillion with a T. We're no longer in the billions, we're in the trillions. And, when they build all these ships that you're talking about, that money comes from the United States, believe it or not. And we had it way down. It was moving, and then we had to fix the COVID stuff. That was really, obviously that was a gift from China. We had to fix that. And so we sort of, it was you had to be in a different mode. You couldn't do both. It would be inappropriate to have done both. But no, I had a good relationship with them until COVID. After that, it was, it was a very different thing. Look, what happened, what came out of China from the Wuhan labs, it caused $60 trillion worth of worldwide damage. 60 trillion. That's more than China, America, that's more than all of us put together could afford. $60 trillion and millions of lives all over the world. So that was a real, as I said, that was a bridge too far.
It's going to be an
But
interesting
I think
first
we will
meeting
have
when
a
you
very
sit
good-
down
and
with
we've
him.
already been talking. We've been talking through their representatives and talking.
All right, Mr. President, are you going to name an envoy for Ukraine pretty soon?
I will be, and we'll have some great people. One thing we have unbelievable people wanting to serve. I don't think they felt the same way. You know, in my first term, people were fighting me all the way. They were just fighting me. In this term, it's so different. I don't want to say people have given up because that's not nice, but they recognize that we really do have that mandate. You know, getting the popular vote by millions and millions of votes, something a Republican doesn't do that often, to be honest.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. But getting the popular vote, I used to hate it when they said, well, he won the election, but he didn't win the popular vote. You know, they'd always say that. And now they can't say that. Now they can say we won the election in a landslide. We have a great mandate to do things. And I just find, like, even if you talk the tech companies, Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and the people, you know, they've all been here. The people from Google have been here, Sundar, Sergey, they've all been to Mar-a-Lago.
Well, they need the tax bill.
I consider that, but I consider that paying respect to the country. Not paying respect to me, paying respect to the country. Tim has been. We have from every company. You have no idea how many I'm seeing. So I'm seeing a combination of leaders. You have Tim Cook. I see the leaders coming from business, and I see also the leaders coming from other countries. As you know, I had the
Prime Minister of Italy.
Italy. She was great. She flew over. We had dinner, and she flew back. So
well,
that's
that is
a sign of respect for our country.
The G7 is not exactly strong. I think Trudeau might resign today. Are you looking forward to working with Pierre Poilievre, the new guy?
I am. If that's what happens, certainly it would be very good. Our views would be more aligned, certainly. But you know, we have a situation with Canada that's very interesting. People at first smiled when I mentioned the concept. We lose $200 billion a year. We subsidize Canada by $200 billion a year. Why are we doing that? There's no reason. We don't need their cars. We can make the cars here. In fact, it would be much better if we made the cars here. We shouldn't be making the cars here. We shouldn't be having cars made in Canada. You know, we're the United States. We're not Canada. We have all the lumber in the world. All I have to do is free it up a little bit, and we have more lumber than they do. We have everything. We have all of the gas and oil and everything that you need in terms of energy. We have more than they do. We have everything. We don't need anything from God. Why are we subsidizing them to $200 billion?
I think you got their
Actually, much
attention.
more than that.
Last question, Mr. President. You got a $15 million settlement from ABC and George Stephanopoulos. I hope that goes to build the fake news wing in the Trump library. Bigger question. Do you think legacy media is bleeding out in real time before us?
I do. I think they're disrespected. I think they're not taken so seriously. Look at me. They were totally opposed to me for 4 years, but many years before that. But let's say from the time I started campaigning, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, because I sort of started maybe when I got out. But they were opposed to me at levels never seen before, where Biden would get good stories and the guy couldn't walk down a hallway. And I did something great and I try and make it as bad as possible. So almost every one of them, we had some support, but for the most part, every one of them. And I won. It's almost impossible. I was told you need Google, you need Facebook. You cannot win without them. You cannot win without the Times, without the Washington Post, the various. And how about ABC and CBS and NBC and CNN? And, Fox gives me a little trouble, too, even, I must say. And then you have MSNBC. I was opposed at levels never seen before, and I won in a landslide. Well, what does that tell you about the media?
That they're out of touch. I think they're bleeding out. I don't think they're going to last your term because I hope you don't deal with them too much. But obviously,
well, I hope we do. I hope they do last. I hope they turn around. All we want is I think it's important to have a fair media. Actually, I don't want them to when you say bleeding out, that's a tough expression, but that's only you could do that. But the fact is that I want them to do well, but I want them to be fair. They're very unfair. And only somebody like me would know, because I know the facts.
Mr. President, they can't reform themselves. They're full of left-wing Trump haters. How are they going to change?
Yeah. Well, they go out of business and then they come back in a different form. Is probably the way.
Well, that's our New Year wish. Congratulations again. Biggest comeback in American political history. I am so pleased by that. Looking forward to it. Good luck in this amazing 4 years ahead and in having a Trump boom 2.0. I hope it's one big, beautiful bill and it's in a hurry, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great job.